Governor of Zamfara State, Dauda Lawal, says he can end banditry in just 2 months if he's given direct control over security agencies. He claims to know the exact locations of bandit leaders and says the only thing stopping him is Abuja's grip on command.
The governor, who broke down in tears while recounting recent attacks in a video which went viral on Wednesday, insisted that with his knowledge of the terrain and the locations of criminal leaders, he could swiftly end the menace if he had the necessary powers. Well, joining us for this discussion is the Director General, International Institute of Professional Security, Dr. Tony Ofoyetan, who joins us this morning. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right, so let's dig into this. I mean, being a security expert, the conversation online simply is one which has gotten a lot of persons talking. How come a governor doesn't have the wherewithal, the power, the strength to be able to call on the security operatives to flush out, as he mentioned, bandits, especially within Zamfara State? Why must he rely on the federal capital territory, or better still, why must he rely on Abuja?
Thank you very much once again. I think the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as it is today, that unfortunately happened to be the defect that is incapacitating many of the governors, especially when it comes to, one, the ability of the governor to issue executable instructions to the Commissioner of Police, the GOCs, and all other flag officers are commanding in their respective locations. Because even when the governor gives instruction or the governor gives intelligence, the Commissioner of Police and the military officers and security agencies are bound to get specific orders from their bosses in the headquarters. In the absence of that, they will not be able to do anything. So that the governor of a state is the chief security officer of his or her state, as it is, it's just a nomenclature, as it were. They don't have that military might. Don't forget that as we speak now, it is only established government security agencies that can bear arms. I'm talking of federal government security agencies, the Army, the Police, the Navy, the Air Force, and SCDC. Maybe a little portion of customs and the like, very selected few of them that can bear arms. And we are talking about terrorism. So terrorism is not a battle of clubs and sticks. It's a battle of sophisticated weapon and weaponry. So if that is the case, that simply means that even if the governor is aware of the hideout of these criminals or these terrorists, the best he can do is to give information to federal government security agencies, and they decide whether they want to go there or they don't want to go there. Depending on them, all variables are actually put in place. And those variables many a times don't actually work in favor of the populace as it were. But having said so, don't forget also that the military is in operation in more than 33 states of the Federation, where unfortunately we are not in a war situation. So you see that the military, be it Army, Navy, or Air Force, they are all, busy. The same thing with the police. So at the end of the day, the best the federal government can do is to think of a complementary agency or complementary strategy that can actually be able to fill in the gap of this obvious inadequacy. They are very obvious because as we speak now, what is the numerical strength of the whole military formation in Nigeria? So if you look at it from that perspective, and you also look at the level of sophistication of the terrorists, you look at the level of their strategic approach, then I think it builds on the government to think outside the box. And truly, I'm also excited that Mr. President is now beginning to tilt towards state policing, which some of us have before now advocated. We have shouted about it that, look, the best way to go now is state policing. It's not injurious. We've tried different types of, government in this country, from Republican, here we are regional, here we are a democratic system of government, a federal system of government rather, and we are still evolving. So the same thing should be applicable to security. It should not be so sacrosanct to the extent that we'll say federal policing should just be the finality of it, or there are a lot of strategies that can be adopted in such a manner that our fears will be allayed when it comes to proper federal policing structure and the like. So for me, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I also understand the position of the governor saying that he is more or less incapacitated, as it were.
Well, I mean, I hear you when you say you understand the position of the governor. There have been reactions to this, and those who criticize the governor saying that he rode on the back of insecurity during his campaign to get into office, and now he's getting in there and is posing this as an excuse, that what must have changed between the time during, campaigns up until now. Did he not know that the constitutional provision you just made reference to, did he not know what the systems and structures in terms of command and control were? So what would your response be to that?
I'm not a politician, and I know very well that in politics there are a lot of seemingly truth but lies that are told just to get that power, even though you know that some things may not be very workable. When a politician says that I will deal with security decisively when I get there, then the question should be whether he would have that might. And when I talk about might, I'm talking about weaponry and the necessary resources. It's only federal government as it is, and based on the type of constitution that we operate today. So if the governor had rode on that mantra to be able to get that seat, for me, it's understandable. An average politician globally plays such politics. But it's also good that one of the things that he's also doing now is speak out. That speaking out will also be able to, blackmail the government to be able to look towards their side, and if possible, to be able to do what is needed. And I can tell you that one of such is the fact that the federal government is more or less like conceding to now begin to actually think of the actualization of state policing. So if you ask me, I will tell you that technically he's doing it, but operationally, the state governor may not have that military might, especially because the law does not allow the vigilantes, the state security architectures to bear arms. If the law allows them to bear arms, then the governor becomes 100% answerable to any act of terrorism in their state. But for today, federal government carries the whole burden.
All right, so this kind of like exonerates the state governor. This also clarifies the fact why state governors have come out to say that there's nothing they really can do to end banditry within the quarters or within their states or borders. But it's not as if there's nothing they cannot do. Right. Let's not deceive ourselves. Okay. So because if you collect security votes every month, that means that vote is meant for something. There's the high level of intelligence that is required of them at their own level. As some of the governors are even more or less like pampering the act of insecurity, because there are local vigilantes that can also be set up at their own level, and they can be broken into very small segments. Their own technology is also very veritable today. To what extent at even the state governors been able to procure the necessary technology, drones and the like, when you talk about quick response, and of course, if you also talk to the commissioner of police and you are on their neck and they know that you are determined as a governor, they also would also be able to do some, to a large level, they will also be able to respond. So it's not as if because the governors don't have the power to command the commissioner of police as it's supposed to be, does not mean that it is outrightly a hopeless situation. No, they also have their own contribution they give to all these security agencies at their own state level.
And there's also the minimal expectation from security agencies. If the security agencies are not meeting up to their expectation, their governors, they have the power to be able to call the Inspector General of Police or call any of the service chiefs to make necessary. They also have the power to even meet Mr. President, lay their complaint as it were, as they ought to. They have the power to also raise up minimum and minor security teams in villages. So if they are determined, it's not as if they cannot do anything. No, but we are talking of this attack on sophisticated terrorists. That's what we're talking about. Ordinarily, when it comes to normal security issues within their domestic terrain, they have that absolute power to be able to do and undo. They have judicial system that can also even sentence up to the level of death. To what extent have they been able to prosecute terrorists or arrest terrorists within their own domain? There are state high courts. State high courts have that jurisdiction to prosecute any form of such offense, even to the level of sentencing them to death. So if they are saying that the government is not forthcoming, what happens if they are able to liaise with them, arrest those people that are perpetrators, prosecute them and sentence them to death, or sentence them to any form of imprisonment? Now, if they have the power to use the judicial system also, they have the power on legislation, the legal regime. To what extent have they been able to use their own legal regime to be able to curtail the excesses of people moving in and out of their state, people that don't have homes and they don't have places to stay, and they are staying in their respective states? To what extent have they been able to use the instrumentality of the law to curtail those excesses? And to what extent have they been able, to profile even their own citizens? No, these are things that are exclusive of state governors. So it's not as if everything is actually on the bulk of Mr. President. There are a lot of things that are on the table of the executive governors. To what extent have they been able to execute all this? The federal government, the only area we blame federal government as I speak today is basically because the state security apparatus are not armed. They are not armed. If they are armed, if you allow for a Lagos State safety neighborhood work also, if the law allow them to bear arms, that, okay, this is Lagos State security force, and it has the power to bear any form of arm. If there's any security challenge in Lagos State, then we hold Governor Sanwo-Olu responsible. That's the only difference. In the absence of that, the governors, why you see some people coming very hard on the governors.
Dr. Ofoyetan, just to, that's clarified at least. It shows that we cannot completely exonerate the state governors, and they also do have their role to play. But I'd like us to look at the fact that a former state governor, Kaduna State Governor, by the name Nasir El-Rufai, just at the start of this month, September 1st, and also initially has mentioned that the federal government is deliberately, in his words, empowering the bandits, and also stated that they're providing them with monthly allowances, stipends, and so on and so forth. And then we have this statement as well, also made by another governor, but this time not directly blaming the federal government, but saying, somehow or somewhat that he doesn't have the power because he's expecting that to come from the federal government. This indictment, or these indictments, what can this actually do to the security think tank of a country, especially looking at the fact that the National Security Advisor is actually the one that's having fingers being pointed towards his direction?
At Kaduna, when El-Rufai was the governor of Kaduna State, he had a very rough battle with the bandits, because the information was that he was actually the person that was paying the bandits. And I think it was when it got to the level of the financial demand becoming too overbearing, that he had to think outside and say, okay, look, I have to stop all this. And unfortunately, if you look throughout the 8 years of Governor El-Rufai, Kaduna was never at peace. Now today, look at what is happening in Kaduna. you see relative peace in Kaduna. That should speak volume to an average Nigerian. If you have relative peace in Kaduna today, within a space of 2 years, and somebody was in Kaduna for 8 solid years, and it was torrential and relentless attack, I think that to that extent, let's leave the issue of El-Rufai. El-Rufai is a politician. So even if he's objective, for now, whatever he's going to say will be 100% tainted as political. And that is also what I would also look at it, because I've done a security, juxtaposition between his government and what is happening presently in his state. So as far as I'm concerned, the issue of NSA paying bandits and the like, it's a weighty one. If NSA had come out to say that, look, we don't do those type of things, and that means that you must have veritable evidence to show that they've been doing it, and the best you can do, you're a full animal. You understand the act of terrorism and the act of anti-terrorism in this country. Then you should be able to have veritable evidence. Push it out. Now that removes you from the terrain and from the argument of political persecution or political criticism to being objective as far as security is concerned. So for now, his own opinion as far as I'm concerned is more tailored towards the political part of it. And I'm not a politician. I like to always address some of these things from the professional perspective. And I've told you, for me, it's 8 years vis-a-vis is 2 years that the government of Kaduna has been on. There's a big wall of difference between the two.
All right. Now let's take away the politics and look at maybe the meat of what was being said and the sense that there might be to it in terms of our approach in dealing with terrorism. Now, hats off to our Nigerian military for constantly putting their lives on the line to protect us. But there's something that has often caused a stir, which is the concept of the non-kinetic approach to fighting insecurity in Nigeria. Another variation of this would be the de-radicalization of terrorists and reintegrating them into society. This has, garnered mixed reactions. There are those who would outrightly say that it's a way of encouraging terrorism because they can run for a few years, come back, confess their sins, ask to be forgiven, reintegrated into the society, their children sent into school. Is this maybe an approach that we need to reconsider?
Okay, thank you. Let me say that for me as a person, a non-kinetic approach in terms of fighting terrorism can never work, except there has been an establishment of a kinetic might. Now, it's just when you talk about two parties going to a negotiation table, there must be a senior party at that negotiation table for the negotiation to work. And as far as terrorism is concerned, the only way you can establish a senior party or partner or whatever is to the extent that who at the battlefield have been able to establish its own might. I'm not saying kinetic approach is a non-kinetic approach is not okay. But as far as terrorism is concerned, all approaches has its own impact and its own result. So one must not be left for the other. Before you talk about non-kinetic approach, you should be able to establish the fact that, look, if you steal, there is consequence. If you kill, there is consequence. And you are able to establish the fact that you have the power to be able to do what? Execute that consequence. Now, if you have not been able to do that, you are not talking about non-kinetic approach. For goodness sake, it's like you are handling terrorism with kid gloves. You are handling it as if it's just a domestic quarrel between a husband and a wife. It doesn't work like that. Terrorism has to do with human beings that do not have hearts, killing human beings that are vulnerable. And after killing them, now you now bring them to negotiation table and you are now begging them. Before you talk about discussing with them, the first thing is that you deal decisively with them. I'll give you an example. Look at the Niger Delta crisis. At the heat of Niger Delta militancy, Obasanjo came. Obasanjo approached it from extremely non-kinetic approach to the extent that the militants could not come out to buy food from their creek. They could not come out from their creek to see their families and their loved ones. They were more or less like banished into the creek. Now in Port Harcourt region, you will see DSS, you see security agencies looking at, eateries and the like. If you go to eatery and you buy food in bulk, you will be arrested. Now, at the end of the day, these boys were not eager because they were hungry, because they could not go out, because they could not have the good life of their own. Now, when President Yar'Adua now came and threw the amnesty program into them, they jumped at it wholeheartedly. That was why you saw that the amnesty program became extremely successful during President Yar'Adua's time. Why? Because somebody has been able to lay a foundation to make the Niger Delta militants understand that if you think you are mad, the government is madder. If you think you are brutish, the government is 10 times more brutish. Now that is what I say as a non-kinetic and kinetic approach. We don't just jump and say, we want to talk about pardon. Look at the history of those that have been said to have been pardoned. And in terms of this terrorism and the like, you call them repentant militant, the terrorists and the like, you give them a crash program. De-radicalization program that we call in this type of, these are not de-radicalization programs, because somebody that have been indoctrinated for more than 20, 30 years of his life, then you now organize a program, bring one cleric for 1 week or 2 weeks, the person talks to the person, and you say that it's now okay, you can go back into the society. They go back into the society, they see that the society is not the way they wanted it. They now do well, they become informants. They now also become a bigger threat, Go back to that same terrorist organization. It doesn't work like that. And I think that, I remember Mr. President said something like that some time ago, that look, there should be consequence. It is only when there are consequences that you now call them together and say, let us talk. Let us give you water, give you this, give you that they will listen. But for now, if the advantages of being a terrorist is it bigger and better than being a free citizen, for goodness sake, they will still continue at that level. And you look at what is happening today. They have the bravado to go and attack emirs, to go and attack kings and the like, if they feel that those people are liaising with security agencies and the like to divulge information. But why do they have that bravado? Because for now, the military have not been allowed to launch out in totality against them. I think basically, if you have these people that somebody will say kinetic approach today, another person will say non-kinetic approach, and the non-kinetic approach are coming from almost the same region, and they are shouting non-kinetic approach, and the people are being killed there, the citizens are being killed there every now and then, and as far as we are concerned, why would you talk about non-kinetic approach to a person that is 100%, it's 100 plus 1% ready to wipe out, and they do wipe out communities? What is the justification?
There's a lot to say. But finally, what's your take on state policing? Good move, and are you excited about it as well?
I'm very excited about it. I'm a strong advocate of state policing because, you know, one thing about them, as it is today, if you look at the issue of crime and criminality, if I bear arms and you bear arms, it's a 50-50 thing. You are not too sure of whether you'll be able to shoot first or I will be the first person to shoot. No matter how hardened you are as a criminal, except you are under substance, everybody is afraid to die. Nobody wants to die, especially in the hand of a second or a third party. So to that extent, and governors will no longer be able to complain that they are incapacitated. Communities will be able to defend themselves if you talk about state policing. Because now at this point in time, all the vigilante boys, all the boys that are in each community will be, you know, become staff of their own state police respectively. They now have the legal power to be able to bear arms, and they now have the legal control of the commissioner of police within that state. And so for me, as far as I'm concerned, it's good. The police, the agency, and the state will be able to arm themselves, will be able to, you know, have their own security strategies and the like. They'll be able to know how to handle it. Each state has its own peculiar security challenge. But as it is now, look at what is happening when the police said that no human Nigerians should bear arms. those that have arms and licenses should deposit it. You now make the whole Nigerians so vulnerable to the extent that, you go to villages, you see people that are being killed and they are without. It's just at times, some of the terrorists may not be more than 5 or 6 that will storm a community. They will perform great havoc in that community with just 5 or 6. How many are they? The whole terrorists we are talking about disturbing the whole country, how many are they? Are they up to 100,000? Compared to the numerical strength of our security agencies, do they have that might? They don't. But because, it's like somebody, our hands are tied, and somebody is flogging us, and we are asked not to lose our hands. So for me, as far as I'm concerned, it's a good one. The only thing I would ask the government to do is not to start with an absolutism structured in a manner that it moves, it also has some level of authority and flow up to the federal level so that any governor or any commissioner of police does not become power drunk as much as possible. But there should be that line. It's just like in the US or in the some other, especially in the US, it can get to a level where, FBI can take over any matter at any time. It doesn't make any difference, whether it is any metropolitan police that may be in charge. They can come and take over any investigation at any point in time. I think that they should look at that police information and all those stuff like that. If they're able to look at it from that perspective, and there's this concept that it is not absolute, there's also a higher authority that when we get to a certain level and it becomes very obvious, I think that would make it a better one. It should be able to be structured in such a manner that they also have that boss at their back. That's the way I see it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tony Ofoyetan, for joining us. Dr. Tony is Director General, International Institute of Professional Security. Thanks for your insights on this topic.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate having me.
Great.